day it is. I believe for sure everyone is watching the US election, but no one remembers me. Today, the 34th birthday of a hired person in Canada. I don't know if the food is good or not. Sleep soundly. Do you want to step on the sewing machine for your birthday today? Anyone who has studied machining should know it. This is a crankshaft. From the surface, it should be made of 235 material. The main thing is to guess the weight. I guess if it's not particularly heavy, it's particularly light. I don't know if any teachers and the audience got it right. I personally think so. Judging from the wires of these to tackle, no more than 15 tons. The old 8 and 3 brothers, including Bangladesh, are all major ship-breaking countries. Ships from many countries will not be required. Pull it directly to them for scrap and disassembly. This crankshaft here is supposed to be a large ship. Just the spindle in the main engine of the diesel engine. The horsepower of large ships is calculated in 10,000, so the oil he burns is also calculated by the ton. Actually, what I'm most curious about is, what is his displacement? Although this thing is Mary's, but many ships do not carry a gearbox. It's a single hose. The back is directly connected to the marine propeller. Rely on this to drive the ship. If these spindles are placed in other countries, maybe fix it. Do you dismantle the car? But reach some countries with relatively backward industries. It can also be used as a spare part. You can only make money by accepting it. Recycling. Crankshafts are usually forged, especially the 235 material. This is very good high carbon steel, so making rails and kitchen knives is the best choice. You can buy this crankshaft. Ordinary ton companies definitely can't do it, so high and low has to be a faucet. This is a high-end industrial artifact, worth the lakh plus the average 7 largest. The thickness seems to be 1.2 meters because of this plus blessing. You can see that the cutting is very fast. The domestic ones, the most used should still be plasma cutting. Safe, efficient, and fast. I think an iron frame was built to cut this. So the limitations are relatively small, and they put everything in a very messy mess. After a 2.5 minute cut, a piece of crankshaft divided into 3. Form 3 segments. There will be some tons in the follow-up. Huntu and Bull companies will participate in the auction. Get a discount. Then use this Jungler tricycle. Ship it to where they belong for processing. So, it's a distribution center. It is sold through first-hand channels to second-hand dealers. Second traders integrate their own resources. Do it a few times and sell it to a third party, subcontract layer by layer. Now, here comes another airdrop company, according to a police report. So, this is a big compressed air field. They mainly produce spindles for compressors. So, it should be with that scrapped crankshaft. After cutting, after another heating section, to make the crankshaft of this AM compressor, the slogan sounds, the hand waves. Now start a segment 5. Squeeze or buckle the ring to accelerate for Uncle Dad. Features and audience. Pressing is very powerful, so about 10 seconds. And that's it. But it's just a prototype. The one in white robe on the left here is the factory manager. On the right are the workers. He's here, talk to him, trying to teach him, and that's it. What are we going to do about it? To make the crankshaft of this amino compressor, the 8th brother next to him should have been doing it for a long time. It's just a square ruler, draw here and there. You can just sketch out a shape. Then V-loops are woven with industrial tools. Perform manual 3D printing. Although this old 8th uncle is thin, but the hand is very, very steady. So, cut it up. The fracture is very crisp and clear, like yesterday's Indonesian internet celebrity Poche steel pipe. It's just one sky and one earth. Then there is a teacher on it and the audience asks one way, why is it cut into this strange shape? Because the crankshaft has a crank. It's just a little eccentric, heavy on one side and light on the other. So they won't build this particular shape, and not for a good looking one. Can a main shaft just now be cut into 3 sections? If you have one paragraph, you can hit for 30 or 40. Only one spindle can hit 12 such crankshafts. This can only be regarded as a graphic, right? Accessories are subcontracted layer by layer to pass through this donkey cart to the next wild spot. Don't know why? Looking at the donkeys on Dad's side, they are all relatively thin. It's smaller, pony cart, and you have to bring one about 150. Jen's green knife robe. Hey, it looks very distressing. This donkey may have come up before he was an adult. Over there, as long as it is a metal-related processing industry, nothing gets off the cake. Whose screen is black? Here is a crown hook welded at both ends of the crankshaft. To avoid the risk of a meal, because both ends of the crankshaft are smoother. Inertia is big and heavy. If you throw it out, you can't eat it after the other end is fixed. And on this end, we have an airplane drill. Drill it out a small hole. Press the thimble against the hole. It will be firm. In fact, their way of thinking. It's still a little bit worse than the uncle with eyes. If it is the eye uncle, he could solder something for something. We start with an opening. So here's the card turtle for the meter. The value he processes should be updated with the customer. Match? It's basically all you have to do is sit here and watch. After all, this thing is relatively expensive, and it's not easy to hide the big fair. The front of the crankshaft spindle. Here, the car needs to come out of a groove, similar to audience dish, because this is installed in the body box. So the bearing needs to be fixed, probably on both sides. They bulge, not gradually. You have to pull it here and there, and now it's the shank position. Then here, maybe this knife won't work, because the material up to 135 has a relatively high density. So there are 10 here and 10 there. So the raw materials? This is definitely a good piece of material. The only thing to control is accuracy. The only beauty deficiency is that there is a teacher above. Wanjong Monocular said this. It would be perfect if you drove the uncle with eyes. His axis is not equivalent. One side is long and the other side is short. On the long side, he has a few steps. The steps are spread out one by one, thicker than the other. This doesn't feel okay. They measure with a ruler. After the size parameters are met, turn to the other end. Stroke start fixed point. We can understand this as a flip-flop. Hack the other end. Bust car old iron. The pig-probed eighth uncle's salary should be quite high. Both started at the same time. Thumbing wire drawing. You can see that the silk is very long. It's continuous. It means that toughness is also very good. A lathe is a lathe after all. They are as accurate as CNC. So some things will have a little positive and negative compensation. Use the polisher hand to support it. And then there's like another station. Take it step by step. Accuracy is improved step by step. This crankshaft is getting smaller and smaller. There is actually a drawing on it. The specification of this paper should be given by the customer. All of them are 85 points and I can't understand them. Then Arabic numerals are drawn on it. It should be the size of the car, right? This is mainly the crank position of the crankshaft. I think the more this is processed to the end, the more difficult it is. Because if you make a mistake, you lose everything. So I always run to my dad, and he looked at the crankshaft. Look at it needle by needle, for fear of making mistakes. Otherwise, all your efforts will be in vain. This is where it drives the connecting rod, and underneath the connecting rod is the piston. So the amount of knives here is very fierce, at least 20 to 4 or more. If this is a 4-cylinder crankshaft, it should have 4 of these cranks to machine. In fact, maybe you don't know it, crankshaft machining is rather special, especially the position of the crank, because he's always in the engine, just a few thousands of RPM, there must be a special extension here. Generally speaking, it will also be ground with a grinding boat, then be accurate to 0.002. The popular music week is like this. Master, pay attention. Every place must be constantly tested and inspected. Go to the school again to make sure it is foolproof. I believe that many of my classmates also do technical jobs. Is a person serious? It doesn't come from his words. Action language. One more emoji. Can you tell from his Taoist robe? This is indeed a man who works every day, and it's the kind that's very crispy. I would stick my body out and get so dirty. I feel this very much. I remember being a veterinarian. There are 3 closed disciples. I am one of them. Obviously, it was me and another. Opened the window and the eldest disciple swept the ground together. I swept it first and then went to take out the trash. I came back and sat there playing with my phone. Right? Because it's almost over. Then the boss comes. You see, name and praise him. How lazy are you guys? I was at that time. Do you know what's going on in my heart? I didn't defend myself. That person even goes along with it. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I do it every day. In fact, I participate every day. Do you know how I felt at that time? The position of the handle is actually very heavy. Boxing. So, wait a minute, I guess I'll have to thin it out. This is also the hardest. First of all, it's not flat, it's diagonal. So, it's easy to collide with knives. This step depends very much on technology. But this is just for a few seconds. In the end, he shaved it into a van, and it's smoother on top. Cars are limited. I personally find it trickier. It would be better to wash the bed at an angle. Therefore, it is also possible that it has not reached a leading enterprise. Is this equipment limited? The hardest part is almost finished. And I looked at the drawing again. Finally, take the position of the handle at both ends, according to this drawing. Then polish it to a suitable size. The cutting in this place is just to see the depth. So, you are very confident in the amount of knives. Plug it directly into this one. The wire drawing is also pulled more. The top of the crown groove color, there's a pattern of big lights coming out. There's a little dot on it, but it's not purple. This kind of buzz, although it seems a bit trivial work. But that's what our ancestors did. So, I thought again. Reverse thinking, these basic hands-on skills. Is it what we need the most now? Because once you rely on the machine, there are many basic things that you may not do for a long time. Even if you remember it in your heart, it will be rusty. If you follow the version of Law 8 at that time, we are based on the generation of people who should be in the 1960s and 1970s. But many of the masters are probably retired. So many, even the smallest tasks. Tips. In China, I don't think it pays much attention to the basics, right? A lot of it is outsourced. As far as I know, the industry. For example, the most famous thing in Wenzhou is shoes, right? You are like many big brands. All this dabong. What version is that? This is more and that is more. The final half shape. Then send it to your own factory for molding. Oh yeah, I feel that there is a lot of moisture in this crankshaft because of the big shot just pulled over. Cut such a small one. Explain that during preliminary processing. In fact, there can be a lot of margin. That's the first cut. In fact, you can cut it smaller. That's not much waste. But on Dad's side, mainly, it can be used. If it's broken, pull another one. What's the most important thing? Cost-effective price is cheap. So, this crankshaft, if you want to stay away from the true meaning, better crankshaft, it's not even close. This kind of product is considered high-end in the old age, because you've all seen grapes turning sand. There are the most ductile iron crankshafts over there. In the follow-up, the crankshaft speed is relatively high. You need to do dynamic balance and oil eye rotation, etc. So, this cement gray old Barra said, he should be in charge of this job. Found a vise to clamp it. Then used a very, very long. It should be the little drill of the little white deer. Actually, what I'm most curious about is, how did he find his oil tunnel hole? There is no template, just a piece of paper. I think the step is amazing. It's just a rulers, and I did some strokes. There must be a formula, and this oil hole, it doesn't go straight through. It's a beveled hole. That's off the spectrum. Does this hole have to go through to the other side? This is a double cylinder. The crankshaft. The drill bit has a little bit of a shield. So here's a little more knitting. The deeper Marsala drill, the greater his resistance. So there needs to be artificial clustering clamping here. This drill is also very fun. It's retractable, and it's cogged. So this is very visual. Just like drilling wells. Especially that dry well. Be sure to hit hard. Up and down. Only in this way can we reach the deepest position. Sure enough, the idea is right. Go from here to there. This is a technical task. If it's worn out, this whole curved head may be worn out, although it can be 3D real material. But this greatly affects his intensity, because the location has to be right. It's like a discount to hit the 7th inch. So here it is. The announced crankshaft is now offline. Personally, I think there should be a follow-up. But it didn't come out here. Like heat treatment, hot working, etc. Then score the seller show at the end. I personally think so. Can put limited resources. Take advantage of infinite recycling. It's commendable. It's amazing to be able to do this with a regular car. But no balance eye. Personally, I think I can give a 9 point.